your brain just won't stop. You're lying in bed, lights off, body tired, yet the mind is sprinting. Replaying that conversation. Imagining the worst-case scenario. Planning a dozen futures that may never happen. You beg it to quiet down, but it gets louder. You're not broken. You're just trapped in a storm your mind was never trained to escape. Welcome to True Stoic Mindset, where we don't just survive the noise, we learn to master it. Here, we study how the ancient Stoics, men like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, faced chaos, grief, and anxiety not with panic, but with power. And in this video, you'll learn a Stoic technique so simple, so clear, that it can stop the spiral of overthinking in its tracks. Because here's the truth. The noise in your head isn't the problem. It's how you relate to it. And what you'll discover today is not another productivity hack, but a way to return to the only place peace has ever lived, inside. Ready? Let's step into the storm, not to fight it, but to walk through it with stillness. The modern mind is addicted to thought loops. You're not just thinking. You're looping. One worry triggers another. One memory opens a door to 5 more. What started as a simple thought spirals into a self-made labyrinth, and by the time you realize it, you're exhausted and no closer to clarity. This isn't weakness. This is design. The modern mind is overstimulated, undergrounded, and conditioned for rumination. In psychology, it's called default mode network overactivity. A constant internal narration that replays problems, anticipates outcomes, and overanalyzes everything, especially under stress. But the Stoics saw this centuries before neuroscience caught up. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts." In other words, left unchecked, your thoughts become you. Here's the problem. Most people think more isn't the issue. They think they just haven't thought far enough. So they keep digging, hoping the next thought will bring peace. But it doesn't. It brings more thought. More loops. More noise. The Stoics didn't silence their minds by force. They trained their focus by principle. They didn't suppress the noise. They stepped outside of it. And that's what you're about to learn how to do. Because the mind doesn't need more stimulation, it needs direction. And that starts with one powerful question. Overthinking is not thinking too much, it's thinking without direction. Most people don't realize this. Overthinking isn't a volume problem. It's a navigation problem. It's not that your mind is too full, it's that it's going in circles with no compass. You're asking questions that can't be answered. Trying to predict outcomes that don't exist yet. Arguing with memories that no longer respond. This isn't deep reflection. It's mental drift. The Stoics made a crucial distinction here. They didn't say, "Don't think." They said, "Think only about what's within your control." Epictetus put it bluntly. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Worrying about what's not yours to control. That's not thought, it's slavery. Modern cognitive therapy aligns with this. The moment we turn thoughts into action, or into structured reasoning, they become empowering. But when left unstructured, they decay into loops of anxiety. So here's the pivot. When you catch yourself spiraling, stop and ask, is this thought useful, or is it just familiar? Am I solving, or spinning? This one question reclaims your authority. Because the Stoic doesn't waste time pondering the uncontrollable. They return their focus to the one battlefield that always matters, the self. And once you realize that, not all thoughts deserve your attention, you're finally ready to stop identifying with the noise, and begin observing it instead. And that's exactly what comes next. You're not your thoughts, you're the one watching them. Here's the shift that changes everything. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of them. Most people never hear that sentence. And even if they do, they don't live it. They live inside every thought, every fear, every what if, as if it were them. As if thinking something means it's true. As if feeling something means it must be obeyed. But Stoicism tears this illusion apart. Marcus Aurelius, writing not to impress the world but to stabilize his own mind, reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." What does that mean? It means the thought is a visitor. You are the home. The emotion is a wave. You are the shoreline. When you start to observe your thoughts instead of becoming them, you create distance. And in that distance, you reclaim the one thing overthinkers feel they've lost: choice. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Mindfulness studies show that when you label a thought, "This is worry, this is judgment, this is fantasy," you activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, not panic. And that tiny act of naming? It weakens the grip. So the next time your mind races, don't argue. Don't suppress. Don't run. Just say to yourself, "A thought is passing through." And let it pass. Because thoughts will come. But suffering only begins when you forget who's watching. And speaking of watching, there's one thing the Stoics never ignored, and it wasn't in the mind at all. The body fuels the mind. Why stillness requires physical grounding. You're trying to quiet your mind, but your body is screaming in ways you don't notice. Your breath is shallow. Your shoulders are tense. Your heart rate is elevated, and your posture says, "I'm bracing for something." Here's the truth. You can't calm the mind if the body is in panic mode. Stoics understood this instinctively. Marcus Aurelius walked before dawn. He sat in silence with his journal. He returned to his breath, not because he knew the science, but because he knew the effect. Modern research confirms what the ancients practiced. When your nervous system is dysregulated, your thoughts become distorted. Your cortisol levels spike. Your working memory shrinks. Your brain's fear center, the amygdala, starts hijacking rational thought. So what's the Stoic approach? Don't fight the thoughts. Regulate the body. Sometimes the most powerful philosophical move is not a mantra, but a breath. Not a quote, but a walk. Not more thinking, but returning to your senses. Here's a practice. Stand up. Drop your shoulders. Inhale slowly through your nose. Exhale twice as long through your mouth. Name one thing you can feel. One thing you can hear. One thing you can see. You've just interrupted the spiral with something Stoicism always returns to: presence. And now that your body is grounded, you're finally ready for the Stoic trick that rewires the loop itself. The trick: interrupt the loop with presence. Here's the Stoic trick. It's not a quote. Not a long meditation. Not a grand philosophy lesson. It's a moment, one clean, sharp moment, where you pull yourself out of the storm by anchoring in what's real. Overthinking thrives in abstraction. It survives on hypotheticals. It loops in past regrets and future fears. But presence? Presence cuts the wire. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every morning. He didn't just write affirmations, he named the world around him. He acknowledged his senses. He reminded himself, "I am here. I am alive. I am capable of choosing." The trick is this: interrupt the loop with something tangible. Right now. Try this. Look around. Name 5 things you can see. Touch something solid. Feel its texture. Say to yourself, "What's the next small action I can take?" That's it. That's presence. That's power. Neuroscience shows that sensory awareness overrides the default mode network, the part of your brain responsible for spiraling, daydreaming, and emotional noise. The Stoics didn't try to think their way out of overthinking. They returned to reality. Because the mind calms when it no longer has to chase what isn't here. And once you learn to trust stillness, not as emptiness, but as clarity, you begin to unlock a new level of power. Let silence be an answer, not a void. Most people are terrified of silence. Not because it's empty, but because it forces you to feel what you've been avoiding. So what do? We fill the space. With scrolling. With thinking. With fixing. With worrying. But the Stoics didn't fear silence. They honored it. They saw it not as an absence of noise, but as a presence of clarity. Marcus Aurelius said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Not a retreat from life, but a return to it. Modern psychology confirms this. Studies show that intentional silence, even a few minutes, can reduce cortisol, increase mental clarity, and improve emotional regulation. Why? Because silence isn't passive. It's processing. It's your brain rebooting. It's your nervous system recalibrating. The problem is, we interpret the lack of stimulus as a sign that something's wrong. But the Stoic reframes this. Silence is not a threat. It's a response. It's what happens when you no longer feel the need to fill every space with effort. Next time your brain gets loud, don't respond with louder thoughts. Respond with stillness. Hold the silence. Let it teach you. Because once you're no longer afraid of stillness, you start to hear what's true. And when that happens, you no longer need to think your way out of every moment. You can finally let go of what was never yours to carry in the first place. What you don't control, you don't have to solve. Your brain thinks it's helping. It replays the conversation. It imagines 5 ways you could have said it better. It simulates 10 possible futures. It breaks apart problems you don't even own. But here's the Stoic truth. If it's not in your control, it's not your responsibility to fix. Epictetus built his entire philosophy around one distinction. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. And most of your mental suffering comes from trying to manage the second category. You're thinking about what they might say, how the economy might shift, whether they'll change or stay or leave. But no matter how hard you think, you can't control it. And that's not weakness. That's reality. Here's what modern behavioral science tells us. People who obsess over uncontrollables experience decision fatigue, emotional burnout, and paralysis. Their brain gets exhausted solving puzzles with no pieces. The Stoic approach? Refocus. When the mind spirals, ask, is this mine to carry? And if not, let it drop. Gently. Repeatedly. Every time it returns. You don't need to finish every thought. You don't need to solve every scenario. You just need to come back to what is actually yours. Your mindset. Your actions. Your principles. That's it. And when you make this shift, the world may stay chaotic. But you finally get quiet. And that brings us to the last piece of the Stoic puzzle, the deepest truth the ancients left behind. The quieter the mind, the clearer the life. You don't need more thoughts. You need fewer that matter. The Stoics never promised a silent mind. They promised a disciplined one. A mind that doesn't chase every fear. That doesn't react to every spark of emotion. That doesn't mistake movement for meaning. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of an empire, fought his own battles of thought. But each morning, he returned to one goal: to be undisturbed. Not because the world would be calm, but because he would be. Today, you're surrounded by noise. Apps, ads, updates, anxieties. And your mind, left untrained, will try to process it all. But you're not helpless. You have a tool the Stoics refined for centuries. Attention with intention. You now know how to interrupt the loop. Anchor in the body. Separate thought from truth. Let silence speak. Drop what you can't control. This is not self-help. This is self-command. And if this resonated, if your mind feels just a little lighter, a little clearer, then follow true Stoic mindset. Because in a world that wants your reaction, your greatest rebellion is stillness. And it begins with you. Right now.